There we go. So hello, everybody. Welcome to today's coffee break. Mike Taylor's with us. He's going to be showing us how to create a new user in SAP. So it's all yours, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Tracy.
Just unmute your screen. Yeah.
I got it. I put a giant thing on my agenda to do it. So
Your stuff. Okay, good.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so hello, everyone. Mike Taylor here. New user creation. So this is something that most customers could do themselves. I find myself doing it just, maybe because the customer doesn't know how to do it. And it's fine for us to do it, but it's also good if you just know kind of how to navigate your way around adding a user, a little bit about licenses, etc. Of course, if you have any questions for us, you can shoot them to us, but here we go. So the agenda today, I'm going to add a user. I'm going to talk about licenses a little bit. I'll talk about authorizations and add-ons. So I'll jump into SAP. So where I normally start, and this is optional, is your employee master data. So under human resources, employee master data. So you don't have to make an employee per user. I just find it's an easy place to start. And with SAP, it'll automatically prompt you to make the user code anyways. So just bear with me if you don't want to make employee master data, but I'll just go through this a little bit. So I'm just going to use Bob Ross. I won't go through every one of these fields. Some of them are just informational. Most of them are just informational. The ones I'll cover are the user code. You don't need to add anything in there. When you go to add the employee, it will prompt you to add the user code, but I will add a sales employee. So I'll just say Bob Ross. So that will assign it there, and that will pull it for this particular user once it's linked to the user code. So it's good to just have the employee master data. You can track things. So it's a bit of a HR module, human resources module. So it can track, home address, work address. Some of these membership like drop downs do have functions or can be used for custom functions as well. Again, won't go through them. Administration, start date, absences, education, if you want to store reviews, some personal stuff, finance, remarks, or attachments if you're going to attach something. So it's a very, it's very quick, easy, limited module for you to do your employee tracking. And that's as much as I'm going to cover there. So when you do this, let's see, what else would we want to add? So let's just go Bob's at Forgestik. So we're going to go add. So now what it's going to say is you can automatically add a new user based on the employee master data. Do you want to add a user? So I'll just say yes. So you can see this kind of does a whole bunch of things at once. It brings over the data. So you only have to type it in one time. It links the employee to the user, makes the user, and puts the email in there. So I don't like to have caps in here because if you do HANA, I believe it's actually cap sensitive. So I'll usually just change that to Bob and then I'll do the full name. So default, I'll just go through a little bit of the user form. You can start at the user form setup. So it's here, administration, setup, general, users, and you, again, can do the exact same thing. Just start in your add mode, add the user, no problems. You won't have an employee record for them, but that's okay. So you'd start about here. So super user, effectively, it gives this user a particular set of additional powers to edit other users' authorizations and to edit printouts, like document printouts, basically. So this super user sets them as a higher level permission user, but it also stops you from being able to restrict them enabled to, using authorization. So they have to have full authorizations for everything. So super user is somebody that can see and do everything and has special powers. So even if you want to give a user a lot of access, you don't necessarily want them to be a super user because you still may want to restrict, confidential accounts or some of the accounting reports and certain things like that. So if you want to do that, leave super user off. Defaults. You could set these. This can be a whole bunch of different things. You could do it by user. It's pretty inefficient that way. Usually what you'll do is by branch or, by groupings of users. And if you drill into here a little bit, you can see that you can have different addresses, you can have different time formats, decimal separators, different warehouses defaulting, different tax codes defaulting, and you can override some of the visual things, some of the printing options, credit cards, and the attachments folder path. So if you do have, typically this will be divided by a physical location. If you have, location A, location B, you could do a set of defaults for location A, a set of defaults for location B. It's a set of tools that allows you to have a little more flexibility. Or if you're between different countries or different languages, you can do different decimal separators and things like that. So they're default. Bind with Microsoft Windows account. This is called single sign-on, SSO. So you can bind your SAP Business One users with a Microsoft user. So if they have access to their Windows, if their Windows is unlocked, they can immediately just log right into SAP without having to enter their password. There's a couple steps you have to do with the SLD in the back end for security. I won't cover that today, but this is what it's for. It'll allow you to link it to a particular user, and it kind of integrates everything all together and makes it a little bit easier. The user won't have to log in. Not too standard, but if you need information, just email us about that. Employee, this is the employee that I made. Email, this was the email that I put there. Anything else that I had put would have been copied over the same. If you make changes here, it'll prompt you to change them back in the employee, vice versa. So this will change the different aspects of the employee when you change the user. Groups allows you to associate different groups of users into various buckets of authorizations, alerts, form settings, UI configuration templates, which I don't recommend using, or across all types. So you can make different authorization groups for users and then assign them to that particular group. Then you would just manage that particular group. It saves some administration. I don't personally use it, but I could explore it a little bit more. And with V10, there's some expanded form settings options too. So now with form settings, we'll see later, you can actually just copy single forms rather than overriding all the form settings. So this might be a little bit more useful now. So you can associate a particular set of groups or one group, and it will allow you to manage this user as part of a group of users rather than an individual. You want to set your password. So I have my password administration on low. I usually just set it 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I will leave change password at next login. So if I set this, send an email to Bob, I'd say, hey, Bob, your login is user code Bob, and your initial password is 1, 2, 3, 4. Then when you change the password at next login, they'll change it and we won't have access to it. And they have their own stronger password. You could say the password never expires. Based on the security settings of your users, you can make the password requirements much stronger, and also that they expire and you can't use like the last 5 passwords you used, etc. User locked, it's pretty simple, it's locked, and these other things I won't really cover them. Services, so by user now you can actually set certain things. This was previously just set in initial set or general settings. And so you would see some various things here: screen locking, using numeric keypad as a tab, enter as a tab key. So there's a couple different things here that people would use. And then you have individual display. So you can switch backgrounds or do certain different things for user by user. This can also be accessed by the user through this new My Personal Settings. I can't remember when this appeared. It was either 9.3 or V10, but now the users themselves can actually change if they get these alerts, and you don't have to actually manage them. They can do it for themselves. So that's always nice. Okay, so from here, I'm going to add, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll leave them off of super user, click add. Okay, so if we go back to Bob, you'll see the user code is linked and the sales employee is there. If I go to Bob here, the next step in what I would do is I would look for a user that's similar to Bob. So let's just say, I'll just use manager because I know it's me. And then I would go to the source user. And what I like to do is copy the form settings. So down there at the bottom, this requires that everybody be logged out, or in particular, Bob can't be logged in. So just make sure you do this before Bob logs in, because if Bob logs in, then you're not going to be able to do it. So this allows you to copy form settings to other users. So I would go here, go to Bob, click. I want to copy form settings, message preferences, tooltip preview preferences. Those are all in the settings. I could do it by group. I don't have any groups for form settings, or you can copy specific forms now. So this is really interesting. I was doing some research, and this is pretty new with V10. So you can actually copy individual forms. So generally, I'll just copy all of them to the new user to match my user, and that will give them a good start for the form settings. But as a side note, if you are an existing user and you make some changes to the forms, maybe you make the column changes, some column changes, you can copy those to another user without replacing every single one of their form column setups. So this is pretty new. So do that, figure out who you're going to do it for, copy to Bob, click copy. I guess it doesn't really matter. Copy form settings overrides what they exist, and that will copy and get them at a good starting point. If you don't do that when they log in, by default, the forms don't have item description showing for marketing documents, and there's certain other things, it just won't make sense. It won't be clean. All your UDFs for every document will be in the end there, etc. So it's really good to get a user that's an active super user, copy them to that end user.
Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you're talking about forms, are you talking about reports, or are you talking about the window that's in a business partner or something like that?
That's a good question, and I should have made that clearer. I'm talking about the form settings. So if you're looking at this, I have, item.
Order.
Yeah. So all the order of these, trying to make them really carefully curated. If you don't have these copied over to that new user, it won't look, you won't have users looking at the same forms. If you look at this as default, I don't want to set it to default, but default is very different from this. So yeah, actually that's a great question. For the forms, generally I'm, hopefully using print and delivery, but even with PLD, the new user should have whatever the default is. So unless you have a more complicated PLD layout, where you have certain users using certain document layouts, like print layouts, though that's different. I hadn't planned actually to cover that. That's actually something I could add to the agenda for next time.
Okay, so it's really for the form settings are really for the sales orders, quotes, and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. So
okay.
what I strictly call form settings, which would be these guys.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Another thing with this row format, just as a side note, I actually just learned about this, is this row format is actually when you double click and view the row details. So you can control this with the form settings with the row. So you can have certain elements in the background and then only visible when you double click on the row number. Whereas the table format is the actual standard format. Previously, I didn't really even look at the row format, but the row format is what's underneath each row in the row detail. So keep that in mind. That's something interesting. You could put some hidden elements in there too. So, okay, so users, copy form settings. You could do it for specific forms. What I'm talking about is the column layouts, it's much more difficult to set up. The form settings, you want to get that set up initially so that the users are seeing the same thing. Now we'll talk about licensing. So modules administration, license administration. So you have your user. Now they have zero access to anything and they can't do anything without a license. So I copy that, I find Bob. I don't have an extra pro, just this is a demo system. So say this was a pro, I'll normally assign the pro, and then I'll assign one of each of these ones. These are just the SAP ones. I don't want to ever have to go and kick them out to set these. So my best practice is just check all those, regardless of where they're going to use them. It won't hurt anything.
You select the license and the add-ons.
Yeah, because you never know what you're going to use. You never know what's going to trigger, say, like SDK tools and SAP add-ons. If they use the EFM manager or something, it's just a lot easier to set it initially than to have to come back and kick the user off. I just don't even think about it. I just put them on there. You have 99999. It's like they all come with the user, so it's really straightforward. If you're a user of V1 usability package, hopefully a lot of you are, you also want to assign a license for that here, administration, add-ons, V1 usability package, license administration. So you want to come through here, find Bob Ross. And then at the minimum, you want to give the V1 usability package. Hopefully you have print and delivery as well. So you're going to give one of each of those licenses. And then when you update, next time they log in, everything should work the way that you want it. The next thing I want to cover is authorizations. So now that they have a user to log in, a license that allows them to do different things, you would want to look at the authorizations. So keep in mind with the user licenses, the user licenses sets the absolute maximum boundary of what the user can do. So if you had, say, a super user that is a limited logistics, they can't, say, look at AR invoices or do journal entries, no matter what. No matter what you set these authorizations for, if the user is limited by their license type, you can never change that. So just keep in mind the license sets the absolute outer limit of what you're able to do. And then within that, you'll be able to set their specific license. So you can see I have no authorization. I'll just take this one from manager, left click and hold it till this little box floats. Drop it on Bob Ross. Do you want to copy manager to Bob? Yes. So you could see that I'm a super user. But if you had other users or a similar user that was kind of from the same department, or again, you're thinking like, okay, you're adding a new sales rep, pick a sales rep that you know actively uses SAP and that has good authorizations and copy it. What you don't want to do is put no authorizations and then do like this full authorization. This will absolutely not work in any way. It will give you so many errors. They won't be able to do all the different things. There's so many little things in here, like being able to print and being able to change certain things. So the best way to go about this is give them full authorization, then start to restrict specific things that you don't want them to see. So then you can go down here, financials, financial reports, no authorization. And then you can, restrict these different things, and you can go through and restrict them from this method rather than going from no authorization. Start from no authorization seems smart, but you're going to run into, at least you're going to run into the document numbering issue. With the numbering series, you're going to get a whole bunch of errors and stuff like that. Otherwise, there's going to be a ton of things. It's going to be way too restrictive, and I don't find it to be that super useful. I have a guide here, how to authorizations. So how to define authorizations. It's a slightly older guide, but I like how it gives you a description of what it is actually letting you do and how it will affect the user. So this is really good for you to see. And if you want this document, we can send it. Just if you want to request it through Tracy, I can send it to her and then you send it to you.
I'm going to write my email here in the chat box, forgestik.com. You can send me the document, Mike, and if anybody wants it, I'll have it on hand.
Yep.
There you go.
Again, it's kind of an older document, but I think it does a great job of explaining what you're affecting. The other thing is, if you do get a little restrictive and then the user starts to use it, they will get a prompt, and the prompt will say, no license for this. And then it will say the exact phrase that you're looking for. So it'll have a bold word in the center, and it'll allow you to override it with another customer. But that bold word that's being blocked by the license is exactly what you need to search here. So if they go to click a button and it pops up that window saying you do not have authorization for this, it'll have a bold, I don't have an example here, I didn't actually set one up. It'll have a bold word. Just remember that word, come back into authorizations, search for it, for that user, and then give them authorizations to that. That's the easiest way to understand how you are going to be able to fix that if there's some issue. So again, looking at one user, left click and hold till the box floats. I have to put update first. You have to be in OK mode apparently. Left click and hold it, drop it onto there, and then you can assign the authorizations. Again, if you have the groups, if they were assigned to a group and the specific group has specific authorizations, you actually don't even need to do this process. So if you assign Bob to group finance or sales, as long as you have this managed, it simplifies what you have to do. It's kind of one less step. You don't actually have to come in here. So that is a benefit of the groups. One other little thing for B1 Up is if you are using B1 Up, another step is administration, add-ons, B1 usability package, B1 usability config. And then you actually have to turn on the dashboard capability for that particular user. So you can see dashboards, ellipses here. So even if they have B1 Up, you still have to come here and check Bob Ross, click OK. And then the next time Bob logs in, there will be dashboards. And then I'm not going to go into actually managing the dashboards, but it's pretty typical that people would need to enable the dashboards for users. So another thing is add-ons. I don't have too many add-ons here, just iPayment and B1 usability package. So if you need to control this by user, so say B1 iPayment was disabled by default, you can look at the user preference. Why can't I see that? Oh, because I have to click this. Weird. There's some sort of issue here. You should, oh, I know exactly what's going on. Fit column width, oh, disappeared. So the user code, if you click on, say, iPayment, this was disabled at a company level. It's active, but disabled. So that's normally how we'll do it if there are specific users that don't need this, they're not going to use this at all. Then you can click user preferences and then say you do want Bob to have this on automatic. I really recommend looking at this. If you have add-ons that a user absolutely does not need to run, just make it disabled for them. Or if it's only a couple of users that are using it, disable it at a company level, it's still active. Then go to the users that actually do need to run it and then put them to automatic and click update. That way you just don't have those extra connections. You just don't want extra traffic. It's just a waste of time. You have to maintain it on that particular machine. It might give you errors because it doesn't, the particular machine doesn't have a specific component, or maybe there's a port that's being blocked or something like that. So that's what I recommend. If you need to assign another add-on license other than B1 Up, there might be another place depending on what you're using too. So when I showed the licenses, there may be other places if you didn't have a license. So if you did have an iPayment license, you would actually have to log in and find the iPayment license. I don't actually have it running. So just keep that in mind too. I already had B1 usability package running, so I could show you where those licenses were. If you use lightweight add-ons, which we do like pretty frequently, you would need to click into here. I'm not going to show how to manage this, but you can click in here and it basically has the same options using Bob as an example, automatic. I would do the exact same thing. Not everybody in an organization necessarily uses iPayment. Maybe it's the order desk and a couple accountants. Disable it so people don't run it. Leave it as active, so it's actually active. Then go to the particular user, set them to automatic, and that'll be nice and clean.
But Mike, I have a question for that, because if we take B1 iPayment, for example, when they sell it to the company, they sell it for 5 users, but usually like the administration knows who the 3 users are using it, and then you've got 2 spares left over. If you're activating it for everybody, is that going to use up the 5 that you have to actually give to someone who really needs it?
Yeah. So, okay, that's a great question. I don't have it running. I'm not going to run it, but the license, there would be another option under here that would say B1 iPayment, and that's where the licenses are assigned separate from B1 Up. So the actual set of the 5 licenses, you're saying 3 and 2 extra, would be in this menu. So it'd be modules, administration, add-ons. There'd be an extra box if it was running. I didn't test it. I think it runs fine. I just don't have it running by default. I don't use it every day. And there will be a license administration in another folder just below this one. That would look the same as this. And then you would want to match it for this the same way. If the user is not assigned at the high level a license, it doesn't matter if it's running or not. It just won't do anything. It won't allow them to run any of the things. I believe iPayment's not too annoying. Like it won't be like, warning, you don't have a license. But if you do try to do anything or try to click on any of the links in the folder of iPayment, it will say you don't have a license until you have the license assigned.
Okay, but my question really was, so let's say, because again, like when we sell iPayment, they're sold in batches of 5.
Yeah.
If you're giving one to somebody, but just disabling it, if I show up and a 6th person really needs it, is it gonna show me that I don't have any available licenses when in fact I do have one, but it's assigned to Bob that wasn't supposed to have it? It's disabled. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I did answer that. The assignment of licenses is totally separate from whether or not it runs or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have your 5. Remember, you have your 5 here, and this is, in case of B1 up, I always make mandatory anyways. But if this was your iPayment, this is where the licenses you could see assigned 2 out of 20. If it was iPayment, again, I'm not going to run it and show you. It's basically the same menu, and it'll have whatever users with your 5-pack. You assign that, to whoever has got the 5. And then this form on this side is whether or not it runs or not whether it takes a license. This has nothing to do with the license, this add-on. This is only if it runs. So that's why I'm saying an even better scenario is if the person doesn't even have an iPayment license assigned, don't run it. It's just a waste of resources. And that kind of ties into what you're saying. So if Bob doesn't have a license assigned, see, no license, boom, just leave it as default. The default is already disabled, and then you won't have any conflicts. But by like out of the box, iPayment doesn't take a license if you run it. It's not like Progemex, something like Progemex WMS. When Progemex WMS, a device uses it, it has a pool of licenses, and that user will take the next available license. It doesn't work a lot like that for any of the licenses within SAP with the pool. Usually they're very specifically assigned, i.e. from this side.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that screen that you have here on the left, so this one, that you just had.
Yeah.
I just want to understand something, because you had there at the bottom, it said, okay, assigned total, so B1 usability package.
Yeah.
So this means that you have 2 people that are assigned out of 20 that you own. So that means there are 18 available for others, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it doesn't show it the same as the SAP license assignments.
No, you have to do it in 2 steps. That's kind of why I showed. Yeah. So that if you follow the steps, that's why, this video should help people. Like, first you set your SAP license. Where's Bob? First you set your SAP license, then you start working through your add-on licenses. So technically you have to give them the SAP license, then you have to give them the B1 up license, then you have to make B1 up run. So there's a couple little things, and I think this is why some customers are just more comfortable getting us consultants to do it. But this video should break it down. So just, if you do have, in this case, it's not too big of a deal. I just have B1 usability package and iPayment. So you just have to do those 2 things: assign an SAP license, or 3 things: assign a B1 up license, and then assign an iPayment license. On my system, and 90% of the system, 99% of systems I'm using, B1 usability package is mandatory. Anyways, if it fails, it has to stop because there's a lot of validations on it. But iPayment, you can set this to disabled, kind of how I suggested. Okay. All right. And then the last little thing I wanted to do is, everybody likes to have a little background. I have the dashboards here, but I think it's nice to have some sort of background or some branding. So what I will normally do is, you can use SQL for this, but now with V10, it's pretty easy. I'll just set it to without. We'll just say for new users. So we'll just toggle it. And then I'll set this back to my normal one, make sure it's centralized. This didn't do it. Click this, and then it will allow you to set that in the background for all users. So I just switch it to without for new users, switch it back to the one I'm using, and then it will prompt it to update it for all users. So the next time, like when Bob logs in for the first time, assuming doesn't have all this dashboard stuff, they'll have the nice logo here. And sometimes people don't like how like stark white this is. So you can actually do a darker background, and then you can have your logo in white in the center. I don't know. I think it's good
the
for
basic screen, right? Like I have in my SAP, I don't use the dashboard. So it's just a blank screen, and whatever I open is all. I don't have any dashboards on mine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think not every single person does have it. So it's nice to have some sort of background in there. So that's another thing, that if you flip those, it'll assign it to Bob, you know, and everybody in the company, so that next time they log in, they'll get the same screen.
Okay. I have one little question, Mike. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's because a few other people were added on here that came in a little late. A question that they often get at the support desk, which I get often, is somebody saying, do I have any licenses? Could you just show us the trail again on how to see what your licenses are for SAP, so that instead of going out and buying a new license, they'll see that they might actually have one that's not being used, and they can assign it to somebody.
Yeah, that's actually a great. So we like, as a consultant, I don't necessarily know all of your users, and in particular larger customers. You know, some have like 60 or 100 users, and I just don't. Unfortunately, I don't know every single person in all their organizations. But you can go administration, license administration, and then you can go to assignment. And so what I would advocate is go through and scroll through who has what assigned. And so that's modules administration, license administration. That's this form. Switch to assignment and just go through and audit like who has what. Maybe you'll be able to like harvest a couple of licenses back, and you're like, ooh, shoot, this shouldn't be applied to this person. This person left a long time ago. So then you can see that you can go back, uncheck it from them, and then you can see components. So the components tab, now you can see pro. I have total of 1, available 0. Okay, so I've done my audit here. I only have 1 assigned to me. I need it. Go through, total number 1, 0 available. So now it's time to contact Tracy and get a new one. If you had limited, you can switch between the limited classes. So if you had SAP Business One limited, limited logistics, and you want to switch to limited CRM, we can switch those classifications for you. So if you have a bunch of extra limited, we can switch the limited between classes. Limited financial, it's pretty useful to list, but and then we can switch them between limited, and that doesn't cost anything. And then if you also just have a limited, but you need that limited to be professional, to have the full range of capability, you can upgrade that limited. You just have to basically pay what the difference was between the limited and the pro. So that'll save you a little bit of money too if you just need to upgrade a particular user. Maybe you find that they keep running into limited stuff. The other thing is too, with B1 up against, super common for people to have it. Go to administration, add-ons, B1 usability package, license administration. It's the same process. Again, sometimes there's 60 or 100, and just scroll through and you could say, oh yeah, I'm not using this. So I can get that back. And now this one kind of compresses these screens together. So you'll see, oops, I'm gonna take this one away. You'll see now I only have 1 out of 20 assigned, and now I can go back and assign it to Bob. So a lot of the times people, somebody leaves or is terminated, and you don't necessarily clean out their user. The other thing too with like Bob is you can go and lock the user up and kind of clean it out. So that's kind of the full cycle. And that's actually a great question. If you do know that you've gone through the license administration and you know that you're at the point where you have nothing available, that's the point where you would need to buy them. Certain add-ons are kind of different than this. Like again, Progemex may be one of the more complicated ones because it uses a pool of licenses. You have to look for it on the server, but most add-ons have something like this in SAP where you can look at it and see if you have anything available. Q&A, are there questions? Sales employee field.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can use the chat box.
Just one second. Okay. How's sales order? Melena's here. Hey, Melena.
I'm not getting that.
It says under Q&A and the.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. I don't use that one. Okay.
So sales employee has nothing to do with DOA, data ownership. I don't even have the owner applied to this particular document. So the sales rep is completely independent of the owner. I don't know if I even have a doc. Let me see if I have one that's maybe more default. I've taken them almost literally out of everything because this is a demo down payment. Yeah, I don't have it in any, but you'll see in default owner field, the owner is separate from the sales rep. So the owner is an employee, not a user. So you just want to make sure you have an employee assigned, and the DOA data ownership authorization uses membership in teams. So you'll have teams that are specifically allowing you to set membership between specific teams as a leader or member. So you can only see between your specific team, or if you're a leader, you can see everybody, or you can restrict it to only seeing your own stuff between DOA. DOA is an entire beast of a lot of stuff. I don't know if we've covered that as a topic. That might be a good topic, Tracy. And your sales order had a custom history button. What does it do? Order history, let me just see. I don't have anything on here. Order history. So in this case, I mean, you could do whatever you want. I'm working on another one for this that's more of a dashboard, but the order history button, it just gives a list of previous orders, whether they've been closed, open, but you could do anything you want. I'm working on one right now that launches a mini dashboard that'll have a lot more options for seeing the history of all of the documents from a customer. And but this is just a custom SQL thing that is built with B1UP. So this is, again, one of the things that B1UP can do, can add all these buttons. Frankly, some of these buttons do work and some of them don't work, but you can set these to be anything that you would like them to be. Your chat is disabled, by the way. Okay. Naima, what's the difference between service sales license? Both of these licenses are not used anymore. So you don't get these ones. If you do have them, these were an older type of SAP Business One license. These are not, actually it's not, no, I'm actually not sure about these ones. There was an older classification, but these are not one of the standard licenses. I actually don't know exactly what these do, but this could be for the apps, but this is probably a HANA app, not an SQL app. I don't actually know, but there used to be a class called CRM standalone and service standalone or something like that. That's the old classification. I believe SAP. Yeah, I believe it can be switched to limited, but it's pretty old. It would have been like before 9.0. So yeah. So if there any other questions, let Tracy know, or the support team, or if you're working directly with me and you want to ask me a question, let me know. And other than that, that's it for me today. I'll switch back to my nice form here.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Mike. Thanks a lot, Mike. So look, everybody, if you're going to want to revise this, I should have the recording of this session up on our YouTube page by the beginning of next week. And I'll also, if anybody wants that document that Mike had that shows you how to set, the document explaining how to set your
authorizations.
Your authorizations. Just send me an email at tracy@Forgestik, and I'll share the PDF with you. So with that said, well, thanks a lot, Mike. Very interesting.
Awesome. Yeah.
See you in a bit.
Thank you very much.
Weekend, everybody.
Yeah. Bye for now.
Bye.